What's Boca saying today? Local Boca Raton resident Joe Graubart has an opinion about politics and procedures, but Joe's opinion comes with experience. He's the former vice mayor and city council person for the town of Surfside, Miami Beach, Florida. He also served on the planning and zoning board for Surfside. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes, good morning. And
Well,
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Joe, you're a resident of Boca Raton now, and we're happy that you're speaking out as far as overdevelopment and helping to educate voters. What do you think is the most important issue going forward on that?
Well, the most important issue, of course, is the upcoming election. That's, I would say, critical because what it really boils down to is having a majority on the council. If you have a majority on the council and that majority happens to be resident-friendly, that will preserve the residents' quality of life. Mm-hmm. So Monica, her being elected is crucial.
Right, right. And from your experience as being vice mayor, what do you see correlates with Boca Raton and our problems here?
Well, there are many correlations. The one you see the most is the donor class, and you see developers having more power in the council than the residents do. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be have been reversed recently with the wildflower vote.
Right.
And the people's involvement to say enough is enough. So it offered a great deal of hope for the future.
I know at one point Boca Raton, historically speaking, had a density cap, which was challenged, and there is not really a cap yet. But do you think that that's a good idea? Is there a limit to how many people you can have in a city?
Well, if there were honest traffic studies and if there was honest concurrency, mm-hmm. which would require that all the matters to quality of life issues, schools, infrastructure, parking, once again, traffic, if they were followed, then perhaps you wouldn't need a cap per se. I don't know how you do a cap exactly. I know that some cities can consider moratoriums, building moratoriums, mm-hmm. to put the brakes on development.
Right.
And I think downtown Boca needs to consider slowing down its development.
Right.
And the same would hold true with Midtown. Midtown
oh, yes.
is it's not a matter of NIMBY, which is not in my backyard. What's good for downtown Boca is also good for Midtown, and vice versa. Good governance in one part of the city is good governance in the other part of the city.
That makes perfect sense.
Well, I would imagine that they will try to push the development before the upcoming election, if possible, because you have many on the council now who appear to be developer-friendly, mm-hmm. and perhaps don't put the residents' interests first.
You know, we talked about zoning a little bit, and it seems to be that there's zoning initiated prior to a project being requested, and then there's zoning initiated by the developer himself. Is that normally the case?
I'm not sure how this city operates like that, but generally speaking, the permit to build is granted based upon the plan submitted. Mm-hmm. And by the time it gets to the council for a vote, it's been worked over greatly. And I've seen some of the plans submitted here where it appears to me that some crucial zoning issues weren't addressed, such as Palmetto Park Promenade.
Right.
If you look at the frontage of that, the mass of that, is that really in scale to a beachfront community? Mm-hmm. The Mark, the same thing.
That's the question, true.
Exactly. So the proof is in the pudding.
Right, right.
If you drive through started Miami Beach on First Street and drive up the coast. Except for a few small pockets, it's highly developed, and living there in these areas can be stressful. I noticed up here that when we were doing hurricane preparation, both for Irma and the previous year, that the stress level here was high.
It's true.
But I said to myself and to some friends back in Miami Beach, that's how it is down there on a daily basis.
Oh my gosh.
It really is. It's not easy to do anything down there, generally speaking.
Wow.
Errands, going to get gas, going to your local Home Depot, nothing is particularly easy there. Up here, it's great, but I can already see changes in the 3 years that I've lived here.
So how do we stop becoming just another overcrowded community like we have to the north and south?
Well, it's very difficult when you look at the treasurer's campaign reports filed with any city, and in Boca Raton in particular, there's like a donor class, and the developers and special interests comprise probably 80% of the money being collected by candidates and incumbents. So until there's some sort of campaign finance, rules and regulations, some reform, it's going to be difficult because they're calling the shots. They're putting their people in office. Once again, Monica is grassroots.
Good morning and Happy New Year. January 1st, and my name is Monica Maya, and I am running for City Council here in Boca Raton in March. Here at the Something Big 2018, what a great event here in Meisner Park Amphitheater. Enjoy an hour of yoga, starting off the year right.
As Andrea Levine O'Rourke was, and you can see the difference when you elect someone who is willing to listen to residents and are resident friendly versus someone who is really a developer friendly person and will grant variances and will basically, to an extent, rubber stamp their request to develop.
What do you think would help voters going forward as far as candidates?
Well, what concerns me, once again, are the campaign treasurer's finance reports that each candidate files with the state and the city. And they're available online, so there's really no one to say, well, this person's doing that or the other person's doing that. They're black and white. And what concerns me is the two things. One is following the letter of the law and limiting your campaign contributions to $1,000, and then the spirit of the law where you do limit them. You don't contribute $1,000 from your company, $1,000 from yourself, another $1,000 from your employees. It's really wrong. If the people want to elect someone, perhaps their contributions should elect the person, not a special donor class. So what I would like to see is hopefully some campaign finance reform for the city of Boca Raton, where the city pays for their election along with a limit that the candidates can collect. The amounts of money being collected now are crazy. They seem egregious to me. And if you look at Miami Beach politics, the same thing went there, and development is incredible there. To call it development is crazy. You'd have to call it way over development.
Right.
You can't do a thing down there. It's gridlock some days.
Joe, what tools does the city have in place to protect against overdevelopment?
Well, the city has tools to protect itself, just as a medieval castle had tools to protect itself. The medieval castle had a moat, had a drawbridge, and had other things to protect it. Here in a city, you have the city charter, the zoning code, the planning and zoning board, and lastly, you have the majority votes on the city council. The council has a great deal of influence, and that's why it's important that the council has not anti-development, but anti-hyper-development. The development appears from the tip of South Florida all the way up the coastline to be out of control when it comes to its overdevelopment. And we saw that most recently with the evacuation during Hurricane Irma. You cannot continue to grant permits to develop and grant variances that increase density and intensity of use of properties without addressing some of these issues that surround concurrency. These concurrency issues include schools, traffic concerns, ability to get across the city without it taking you a half hour, all sorts of things that are concurrent, including infrastructure.
Right, roadways. Gosh. Well, these are all important things that we have to keep mindful of as March rolls around.
Yes,
And hopefully you'll come back and give us a few updates as we get closer to the election.
for sure.
Great. Thank you for joining us today, Joe.
Thank you.
That's it for today, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, stay involved, stay informed. Keep your comments coming into bocawatch.org.